Good afternoon and welcome to the ACCSC webinar, Be Realistic, Be Ready. My name is Christopher Lambert. I am ACCSC's Associate Executive Director, and I'll be your facilitator for today's webinar. It seems that we have a pretty popular topic with almost 900 registrations today for the webinar. In fact, I looked just a couple minutes ago and we were holding steady at 899. Let me go ahead and pop in really quickly and say hello to everybody. Hey everybody, thanks for being here with us today for the webinar, Be Realistic, Be Ready. I think we have a pretty good topic today. I'm going to do my very best to keep it interesting and keep it moving along. A couple of lessons from our last webinar. First of all, it's very important that I, as the webinar facilitator, have working audio, which if you were with us last webinar, you really couldn't hear me for the first few minutes. So if you can hear me now, we're off to a much better start. Second, we're going to save some streamlined Q&A until the end of the webinar. We got a lot of feedback from participants, and they found that the Q&A during the webinar itself was a bit disruptive. So we'll save some limited Q&A at the back end. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is there was a lot of requests last time for certificates from coming to the webinar. And so what we've done is we've created a certificate. You can access it in the system here, in the content management system on GoToMeeting, along with a copy of the slides. And I will also have a copy of the certificate, a copy of the slides, and a copy of the webinar recording online at accsc.org in the coming days. So I will pop back in towards the end of the webinar. I hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So I'll see you all in a little bit, and thanks so much for taking the time to be with ACCSC for this important training event. Well, if you have been on an ACCSC webinar before, you know that we like to lay a solid foundation to ensure that we're focusing on the issues that matter as it relates to being a high-performing accredited institution. And at our very foundation, the Commission recognizes that meaningful things are happening every day at accredited member institutions. The on-site evaluation experience is the cornerstone of the Accrediting Commission's ability to speak with confidence about the performance of 675 accredited institutions that teach hundreds of thousands of students every year in career fields designed to lead to successful in-field employment. So I can say meaningful things are happening with confidence because in 2015, the Commission conducted 330 on-site evaluations, including 32 unannounced visits. And through the first 3 quarters of 2016, the Commission conducted 216 on-site evaluations. As you would expect, given the career and technical nature of ACCSC institutions, demonstrating successful student achievement is a critical aspect of an institution's success in the accreditation process. In fact, while the established employment benchmark for all programs offered by accredited member institutions is 70%, the data shows that accredited member institutions have demonstrated an average of 78% employment over the last 11 years. And again, I can speak to the reported rates of graduate employment with confidence because since 2011, the Commission randomly sampled graduate employment records from 300 different institutions. And since 2014, 226 institutions in the accreditation process have met the independent third-party verification requirement. Suffice to say, the mandatory requirement for an independent audit of employment data underscores that the enterprise of accreditation is evolving and improving. The Accrediting Commission and its 675 accredited member institutions are working to change the dialogue from skepticism to confidence, and there is certainly a lot of skepticism about accreditation, as well as questions about the rates of student achievement that an institution is required to report to its accrediting body. With respect to questions as to the effectiveness of programs and services offered by ACCSC accredited member institutions, we believe the confidence can be found in knowing that since 2011, 12,894 employment records have been randomly selected for independent verification by the Commission. And since 2014, 16,933 employment records have been subjected to an independent audit as part of the accreditation process. The Accrediting Commission truly believes these efforts, which not only demonstrates the reliability and dependability of accreditation, but also shows the significant and sustained success of students served by ACCSC accredited member institutions. And to put a finer point on the matter, when we're talking about workforce development, we can see that last year alone, 2,800 welders, 3,200 HVAC technicians, 1,200 truck drivers, 2,000 electricians, and well over 5,000 automotive and diesel mechanics joined the workforce because of the training they received at an ACCSC accredited institution. The Commission also believes that the overwhelming majority of accredited member institutions experience and demonstrate significant success in training their students due in large part because of the rigorous demands of ACCSC's system of accreditation and not despite it. When we look at data from 2015, it shows that 70% of the schools seeking renewal of accreditation were successful in earning accreditation in their initial review by the Accrediting Commission. In fact, if we dig deeper, I can share that 10 institutions were recognized as a school of distinction at this year's Professional Development Conference due to their performance in the accreditation process, having no findings of noncompliance at the Commission level, whereas 15 institutions were recognized as a school of excellence, had no findings of noncompliance at the Commission level, and received a 6th year of accreditation due to the high levels of student achievement reported, which as part of this process was independently verified. And this is what instills confidence in the Accrediting Commission that member institutions are able to use the standards of accreditation as a blueprint for institutional success and performance. As you might imagine, there is phenomenal interest in accreditation, particularly from institutions seeking accreditation from ACCSC for the first time. And as you would expect, commissioners, staff, and volunteers are faced with an incredible amount of work. As Dr. McComas noted in the October 6th Inside Higher Ed article on this very topic, despite the heightened interest in ACCSC accreditation and the tremendous amount of work associated with that, quote, "We want to ensure that our agency continues to do the high-level work that we're known for," end quote. And as an organization, we are doing just that, which is to say everything that we can to ensure that the Commission continues to offer high-touch accreditation services. One of the questions that Mike and I often get, given that hundreds of institutions have expressed an interest in pursuing accreditation, is what is the Accrediting Commission looking for? And we've given this question a lot of thought. Coming off the 2016 Professional Development Conference and having the entire Commission together, I have some clarity on the answers to that question. The Commission is looking for flagship schools, schools that have strong programs that benefit students and the communities they serve, schools the Accrediting Commission can be proud of and stand behind, compliance with the standards of accreditation and beyond, and schools that support peer review and embrace accreditation and are not looking to do the minimal amount of work necessary to demonstrate minimal compliance. And it is through the accreditation process that the Commission is afforded an opportunity to learn more about institutions, their programs and services, their consistency in institutional operations, their compliance with accrediting standards, and the reported rates of student achievement. The on-site evaluation process is the focal point of the accreditation system and provides the best opportunity for the Accrediting Commission to fulfill its obligations to provide for the public accountability. The Commission takes this responsibility with the seriousness that you would expect. The accreditation process is the cornerstone of any accreditor's ability to continually ensure the high quality of education at their accredited member schools. This process requires an institution to conduct a comprehensive self-evaluation, to require an institution to realistically assess how well the school is fulfilling its mission, and to discuss the effectiveness of the school's educational objectives. This underscores the explicit responsibility that an institution has to demonstrate compliance with accrediting standards if it is not only to earn accreditation, but continue to participate in the Title IV student loan program. When you look at the compliance requirements captured in the standards of accreditation, as you might expect, there are specific standards that address key administrative, operational, and educational requirements necessary to help ensure that each and every student has an opportunity for a high-quality education, from admissions policies and practices, to student services, career services, and faculty qualification standards, to ensuring that institutions have sufficient educational resources, such as equipment that reflects current occupational trends and practices. But what I hope you take away from the standards is that each and every section is driven by the fact that it has an impact on students. For example, if you put an unqualified faculty member in the classroom, we believe it will impact students. And if the equipment is out of date, we believe it is going to impact student readiness to enter and be successful in the workplace. And so my first challenge to you as an institution is to change your perspective and to view these standards through this student-centered lens. So let's get into the very heart of today's webinar. The staff here took some time over the last quarter to do an assessment of not only the number and types of compliant findings expressed by on-site evaluation teams in the official record from the visit to the school, known more popularly as the team summary report, but also the areas of concern expressed by the Commission in Commission action letters. And what we found were 8 different areas tied directly to the standards that seem to get a lot of attention either by teams or by Commission itself. And to help convey this information in what I hope to be a user-friendly webinar format, I'm going to do my best to, 1, talk about the key elements of the relevant standards. The staff find it a good practice to go to the standards when looking at compliance findings. 2, discuss specifically what on-site evaluation teams and or the Commission noted in either a team summary report or a Commission action letter. 3, address the critical information that institutions need to provide and support with documentation when addressing these compliance findings. And 4, share some best practices of high-performing institutions that have used the standards as a blueprint for success. So let's kick things off with number 8. Section 1 of the Standards of Accreditation address the requirements schools must meet, not only with respect to the qualifications of management and administrative personnel, but institutional assessment and improvement planning. The standards express the Commission's explicit position that it believes when a school fails to plan for future improvements, it cannot provide an assurance that it will operate in compliance with accrediting standards, meet its objectives, and fulfill obligations to students. Section 1B, 1 and 2 of the substantive standards express the requirements for a school to regularly engage in institutional assessment and improvement planning by documenting IAIP activities that support and enhance the quality of education provided. A long-term trend in compliance findings expressed by an on-site evaluation team centers around the lack of documentation to demonstrate that the school engages in ongoing institutional assessment and improvement. The normal renewal cycle requires an on-site evaluation team to conduct an analysis of the school's compliance with accrediting standards throughout the entire term of accredited institutions for accredited member schools, and since the time of application for non-ACCSC institutions seeking accreditation for the first time. In this particular example, the on-site evaluation team noted the lack of documentation showing any implementation of the school's IAIP in 2013, 2014, 2015, and to date in 2016. The IAIP finding is one that the Accrediting Commission, as the decision-making body, wrangles with often, hence it being in our top 8. And there are a variety of reasons, including no plan in existence, the same plan from the last accreditation cycle, or a plan prepared for a different accreditor, vague, unclear, unspecific plans, or unrealistic plans that do not align with the school's mission. Often we see a lack of budget allocations resulting in a lack of implementation on any strategic initiative. And in this particular example, there's no documentation showing that any initiative has been implemented over the last few years. And so when responding to this particular finding, an institution should be sure to describe the school's IAIP process and how the staff, faculty, students, and program advisory committees contributed to the school's self-evaluation process. Fundamentally, how did the institution go about putting together the IAIP? You should describe how self-evaluation process is a meaningful, significant, and ongoing process. Remember, the IAIP is not a one-time activity. And given in this example, the team found no documentation of implementation of any strategic initiative over a period of several years, you need to explain how the process is not only ongoing, but forward-looking. Section 1B2 of the standards identifies the key elements that must be covered, like fiscal condition and budget, student support services, faculty and staff development. So at a minimum, make sure that these bulleted items are included and identified in the school's plan. And critically, provide documentation over a date range to show that the plan is not only finalized and in place, but that the school has already initiated activities in a systematic fashion. In terms of best practices, avoid creating a plan that is just handed down from the corner office or a plan that is just provided by the corporate compliance team without any input or reasonable expectation of buy-in from the staff that actually run the school day to day. Keep in mind that the number one reason why IAIP initiatives fail is there is no money set aside to support implementation. So be sure to create a line item on the annual budget that is exclusively in place to support IAIP activities. If a visiting team is on site and notes that according to documentation, 90% of the IAIP activities took place in the 21 days that led up to the visit, the school has not demonstrated ongoing compliance throughout the term of accreditation. So there it is, number 8, IAIP. Let's go ahead and move forward to number 7 on our list, faculty development planning. And as you might expect, faculty development, which is often tied directly to the school's IAIP, is the number 7 finding on our list. If the school has not engaged in ongoing IAIP activities throughout its most recent term of accreditation or since the time of initial application, there's a pretty good chance that it has not engaged in faculty professional development activities either. The foundation of these standards is the fundamental belief that the success of a school is directly related to the quality of its faculty, and that by hiring and retaining qualified faculty, a school is able to strengthen the quality of its training program. The purpose of Section 3 of the standards is to require schools to retain a strong and experienced faculty that is continually attentive to the needs of students, interested in strengthening the curricula, and obligated to continued self-improvement. As stated in the standards under Section 3, a school must ensure that its faculty are appropriate, suitable, and sufficient in number for the instructional programs offered by the school. Interestingly enough, faculty, although in our top 8 compliance findings, is also an area of strength for accredited member institutions, as evidenced by the 94% satisfaction rate from survey results of over 9,700 students who were surveyed by the Commission in 2015. An overwhelming number of students responded to survey questions by noting that instructors make class interesting, have positive attitudes, and treat students fairly, that faculty answer questions in an understandable way. There are two common compliance findings of non-compliance that center around faculty. The first is that documentation does not exist to demonstrate that all faculty are engaging in faculty professional development as required. The second is that the school is not able to document that it verifies prior work experience of faculty and administrators. As stated in the standards, a school must not only be able to show that it has implemented a faculty development plan and that it verifies prior work experience, but critically that it does so in a systematic fashion where every faculty member engages in professional development and the school can demonstrate that it verifies prior work experience for every faculty member employed. Providing a matrix is a great way to organize this information as it provides a roadmap for the Commission as the decision-making body to determine that the school's efforts are documented for every faculty member, not just a handful of faculty. Schools that are successful in the accreditation process are able to demonstrate the systematic application of their faculty development plan. As is the case with the IAIP, often faculty development planning compliance findings are because there is no budget in place to support these initiatives. But as an aside, schools have also shared that it is critically important to customize professional development plans for individual instructors and have realized that their best teacher development resources are their own faculty members. And as a result, many schools have effectively formalized and implemented budget-friendly mentoring and shadowing programs. Number 7 on our list, faculty development planning. Let's move forward and get to number 6, student services. From the vantage point of the institutional accreditor of hundreds of institutions, I can attest that student services is probably the most significant strength of our member institutions. Accredited member schools offer individualized attention to students and graduates and deploy a diverse array of programs and services that are designed to support the student educational experience in profound and meaningful ways. In fact, based upon the surveys of 9,700 students conducted by the Commission in 2015, 90% of students surveyed expressed satisfaction with student services offered by the school, indicating they were aware of academic advising and tutoring, career services, and other initiatives designed to help a student be successful. Under Section 6, the standards require schools to demonstrate that it remains attentive to students' educational and other needs, that services are coordinated by individuals with appropriate qualifications, and that the school maintains documentation to demonstrate the application of student services in a consistent and ongoing fashion. A common and general finding about student services focuses on the results from student surveys conducted as part of the on-site evaluation. In this example, 46% of students surveyed as part of the renewal of accreditation process expressed dissatisfaction about their decision to attend the school, and 44% indicated they would not recommend the school to a friend. On these results alone, the Commission would likely question why students are so unhappy, particularly given that in 2015, these same survey questions were asked of over 9,700 students attending an ACCSC school in the accreditation process, and the satisfaction results were 90% and 87% respectively, not 46% and not 44%. When addressing this type of concern, a school should not only describe its student services and initiatives, particularly those implemented since the on-site evaluation, but resurvey students using a similar survey instrument and provide a comparative analysis as well as any comments on areas where there was less than 80% satisfaction. Essentially, What has the school done since the on-site evaluation, and how has it impacted student satisfaction? Has there been any positive movement on the reported rates of student satisfaction since the on-site evaluation? With respect to best practices, getting things started off right early for students is crucial, which really underscores the importance of a robust orientation for new students. This of course cannot happen unless the school makes it a priority with appropriate budgetary support. Beyond orientations, one of the bigger challenges schools face centers around the culture of documentation, as every single administrator and faculty member plays a role in the delivery of student services. And unless these efforts are documented from a compliance perspective, they never really happened. Those institutions that make a concerted effort to get feedback from students about their satisfaction with the services offered, with employers about any perceived skills gaps that might exist, and from graduates about any weaknesses they might have had coming out of the school, will be able to adapt and modify their student services in a manner to have immediate and meaningful impact on the student educational experience and graduate preparedness. Institutions in the accreditation process should have the expectation that the on-site evaluation team will conduct a random sampling of student and graduate records in order to assess whether or not the school is applying its procedures in a systematic fashion for every student enrolled. For example, teams will look at the signatures and dates of school officials and students on executed enrollment agreements, as well as the identified start date. You should review copies of admissions documentation, satisfactory academic progress, transcripts, as well as the application of student services and refunds for students who withdrew or who were terminated. As a best practice, institutions should regularly conduct in-house, unannounced random file reviews to gain a better understanding of how the school's compliance initiatives are being documented. Through this process, the school should do its own assessment as to the consistent application of its established policies and procedures, modify any processes as needed, and ensure that documentation exists to show the consistent application of refund policies, student services, career services initiatives, and admissions documentation. This brings us to number 5 on our list, the learning resource system. Accrediting standards require learning resource systems to include all materials that support a student's educational experience and enhance a school's educational programs, such as libraries, texts, electronic resources, library consortia and interlibrary loan agreements, computers, and research databases. The learning resource system can be decentralized for certificate and diploma programs and centralized for degree programs. But resources must be easily and readily accessible to students and faculty during and beyond classroom hours, regardless of location or means of delivery. When we look at student satisfaction results from 2015, again, 90% of surveyed students agreed with the notion that there was an adequate orientation to the LRS, that the library was appropriately staffed, and that the library is useful and accessible beyond and during classroom hours. Based on survey results alone, it is apparent that schools are doing a good job ensuring that the LRS remains relevant, usable, and useful to students. We can also see that accrediting standards require the LRS to be integrated into the curriculum, and thus schools should expect that an on-site evaluation team will want to see examples of student work, and that for degree-granting institutions, the Commission's expectations regarding the management of the LRS increase. For example, schools offering a baccalaureate degree or higher must employ an individual with a master's degree in library sciences to provide oversight of the LRS, you are a post-secondary baccalaureate degree granting institution. Two common findings emanating from the on-site evaluation center around both the supervision of the library and the lack of documentation to demonstrate the ongoing development of the LRS. When addressing questions as to whether an individual is qualified to supervise an LRS, the school's focus in responding is simple. Provide the information on the individual's background, educational, and other relevant experience to simply demonstrate compliance with accrediting standards. Regarding policies and procedures for the ongoing development, it would not be a surprise to learn, given our conversation about the IAIP and faculty development planning and orientations, that a school often falls short of implementing an otherwise stellar LRS improvement plan because there was no budget established to implement and support these strategic initiatives. This is often the case. And so make sure you have a budget and operate in an environment where the librarian is encouraged to spend the allocated budget and to make improvements and enhancements to the LRS as needed. From a best practices perspective, it starts with focusing on establishing and following the strategic plan that is supported by an appropriate budget. But institutions should also take the time to survey students about usage and access, to talk about how they are weaving the LRS into the established curriculum, as well as to assess how it is using technology to enhance the delivery of LRS materials through the use of apps or other digital media. That is number 5 on our list, the learning resource system. But no compliance list, no top 8 list would ever be complete without a reference to program advisory committees, which comes in at number 4. And when we look at the 274 team findings captured in 66 team summary reports, which is slightly more than 4 findings per on-site evaluation considered by the Accrediting Commission in May 2016, we see that Program Advisory Committee comes in at number 4 with 19 total findings. And if I were to jump back to February 2016, where 191 findings of non-compliance and 70 team summary reports were considered by the Commission, slightly less than 3 findings per on-site evaluation, I see that Program Advisory Committees comes in at number 2 with 21 total findings. And so we know that compliance with standards regarding Program Advisory Committees is challenging for institutions. Surprising on one level, because it is a standard that is very prescriptive regarding the explicit expectations for program advisory committees. And in a reaction to this ongoing compliance trend, the Commission established a budget to support member services to include a series of free workshops, seminars, and blueprint compliance manuals, webinars like the one you find yourself on today, and a consultative monograph series and companion webinars that focuses on best practices of high-performing institutions, including a series which provides practical information to help schools maximize program advisory committees and provides institutions with strategies to plan for successful meetings and improve PAC effectiveness. With respect to expectations for PACs, the standards are clear. 3 employers or practitioners from the field in attendance at each meeting. 2 meetings per year per program, one of which is held each year on campus. That is our 3, 2, 1 expectations for program advisory committees. Minutes must reflect the established curriculum of the program and include comments as to the appropriateness and adequacy of program objectives, program length, curriculum content, including academic general education or applied general education as appropriate, learning resources, and the adequacy of facilities and equipment. At least annually, program advisory committees must comment on student graduation, graduate employment, and where required, state licensing examination outcomes for each program. This is particularly important if a program offered by the school starts to trend downward in terms of the reported rates of graduate employment. The Commission will want to know what the PAC members had to say about the employment trend and what strategies are being developed to help improve the success of graduates in earning employment in the field. So make sure the minutes are clear. Provide a comprehensive summary of the discussion by employers and practitioners in the field regarding employment trends. A typical compliance finding shows that through a school's most recent term of accreditation, the school did not facilitate PAC meeting in accordance with the established standards. In this case, the school either failed to have 2 PAC meetings per year, failed to have any meetings in any given year, only had 2 PAC members in attendance at a PAC meeting, or failed to provide meeting minutes that reflected the review and commentary made by members, thus failing to meet the minimum compliance requirements over the most recent term of accreditation. If a school finds itself in a position for whatever reason it fell short of the minimum expectations for a program advisory committee, the very first thing I would do is to schedule and facilitate a PAC meeting. In fact, I would have multiple meetings in this case, given how far from compliance the school was operating over the last term of accreditation. In this particular example, at a minimum, I would expect the accrediting commission to place the school on formal reporting because the school was so far from compliance regarding program advisory committee meetings. So let's talk about some best practices and ways that schools can ensure success by continuously involving PAC members with the school throughout the year, by providing copies of an annual report or school newsletter, by inviting PAC members to speak or at least attend graduation ceremonies, to invite PAC members to guest lecture and participate in career days. PAC members make great judges of student competitions and would be an ideal person to involve in any community service initiative, particularly when local community members or other VIPs are in attendance. Have an employer tell your institution story. Have a graduate tell your institution story. You should make a concerted effort to make PAC members feel valued and part of the fabric of the institution by helping them to see the impact of their involvement on students. Help establish buy-in and get better attendance at meetings by allowing PAC members to include their own agenda item, which they will lead during the meeting. And be sure to show the PAC members all of the work that you have done at the institution since the last time you got together, and highlight the efforts that were implemented based upon PAC recommendations. There are a lot of cost-effective ways an institution can recognize and support these individuals who will be dedicating time, effort, and energy in support of the school and students that are being served. From certificates of appreciation to implementing a PAC Wall of Fame, or even publishing information about PAC members or their industry affiliations or their employers in the school catalog. One thing we can say with confidence is that the Accrediting Commission puts a tremendous amount of weight on the feedback that an institution receives from Program Advisory Committee members. So be sure to dedicate the resources required to manage an effective PAC. We are now entering the top 3. And coming in at number 3 is, dramatic pause, admissions. And what is well known to accredited member institution is that the Accrediting Commission requires evidence of a high school diploma or equivalent prior to enrollment, and that the Accrediting Commission does not accept an attestation from the student. Admissions documentation is so critical that as an enhancement to the existing standards under Section 5, the Commission drafted Appendix 5, which supplements the standards and provides exhaustive language on the explicit expectations for admissions documentation. And when we look at student satisfaction from the surveys conducted during the on-site evaluation process in 2015, we again see high levels of student satisfaction regarding admissions, with 93% of students noting they received accurate information on the admissions process and tuition costs, that they made the decision to enroll without undue pressure, and that they received a copy of the enrollment agreement and catalog. All schools in the accreditation process should expect that the on-site evaluation team will conduct a random file review to ensure that admissions documentation exists in the school's files. A typical compliance finding regarding admissions documentation can be seen when the school has a conditional period of an enrollment but does not secure admissions documentation in advance of students conditionally starting classes. This does not meet the requirements set forth in the standards of accreditation. You can also imagine that there is tremendous interest in ACCSC accreditation, with hundreds and hundreds of institutions seeking to apply for accreditation from their current accrediting body, which did not require documentation and allowed for student attestations. For these institutions, keep in mind that compliance with ACCSC standards is required at the time the application is filed and throughout any subsequent term of accreditation. To address this particular finding in a comprehensive and systematic way, a school must provide documentation to demonstrate that all students enrolled over a particular date range met the school's admissions requirements prior to enrollment. That is to say, if the school revised its admissions policy to require proof of admissions documentation, the school should also provide documentation from that date forward to demonstrate the consistent application of the new policy. Finally, one other area that tends to come up during the on-site evaluation is the expectation that admissions documentation from foreign countries is to be translated and certified to be at least equivalent to the credential, which is typically a U.S. high school diploma required by the school in its admissions criteria. Translated and certified. When we talk about best practices, although there are no standards that require a school to talk to an applicant about the expectations of the program, such as being in uniform and on time and in class for the next 6 months, or to talk about barriers to success like transportation and childcare as part of the admissions process, schools should discuss these and discuss the services offered by the school to help students overcome these outside of the classroom challenges. And much like we discussed under student services, schools should conduct in-house, unannounced file reviews to ensure consistency in the admissions process. Well, we are now down to our top two. And coming in at number 2, no real surprise, is independent verification. Independent verification, as of January 2014, requires all schools seeking accreditation from ACCSC to subject graduate employment records to an independent third-party employment verification process. The overall goal of this process is to provide a school with an opportunity to demonstrate with supporting documentation that the Commission can place a high level of reliance upon information, data, and statements provided by the school by supplying verifiable records of initial employment. The Accrediting Commission has always required a school to maintain verifiable records of initial employment. As previously shared, in 2001, the Commission began a random sampling of almost 13,000 employment records submitted as part of the ACCSC annual report process. And since 2014, almost 17,000 employment records have been subject to an independent verification process as part of the accreditation process. A sample finding in this area focuses on the reliability of graduate employment records, where in this example, 46% of graduate employment records were unverifiable and 16% were verified as incorrect, which does not demonstrate that the Commission can place a high level of reliance on the information and data being provided by the school. Suffice to say, 46% is high. The key elements in an effective response must reinforce the school's established policies and procedures surrounding employment verification by providing verifiable data to demonstrate the reliability of records for graduates listed as employed in the field. Most directly, it would mean subjecting a new subset of graduate employment records over a designated period of time for independent verification to demonstrate the enhancement made by the school to its policies and procedures is having a positive impact on the reliability of data being collected by the school. For example, a school could respond by having completed verification forms for all graduates categorized as employed in the field over a designated time frame with descriptive information about the relatedness of employment that shows that all graduates employed in the field have gone through the employment verification process. In terms of best practices, the number one piece of advice is to start early. The older the employment data, the more difficult it proves to verify. And as simple as it sounds, a school should verify the employment after the graduate starts the job, particularly when a student was offered a job during externship. The question becomes, after they graduated, did they go back and start the job that they were promised during externship? Consider making independent verification a regular ongoing process, not just once every 5 years as required, especially for programs that did not perform well during the most recent verification project, or for programs that have historically demonstrated a low graduate employment rate. It is important for schools to talk to students, ideally at orientation, about the expectations for career assistance and employment verification, and to ensure that students sign a release form at graduation, not enrollment, but at the time of graduation. Career Services has a critical role to play and should ensure that records have been reviewed in-house before being subjected to third-party verification. Sloppy record keeping is also a common reason why there is a challenge to an employment record. Schools should set the expectation with employers to ensure they are aware of the verification requirement and to discuss strategies to ensure that the verification efforts do not become overly burdensome. Finally, schools should maximize the relationship with the independent third party by ensuring they receive regular updates on the project, as well as to take the time to ensure they have any necessary disclosures from the third party on their backgrounds and previous affiliations, as well as a disclosure on how well the third party is training their staff to conduct the verification in accordance with ACCSC's established rules. Well, this brings us to number one, the most critical issue on our list. coming in at number 1 is program viability and program performance. The Accrediting Commission has the explicit expectation that each program offered by the school is appropriate to enable students to achieve the program objectives and to acquire the knowledge, skills, and competencies necessary for initial employment in the field for which training was provided. ACCSC uses benchmarks for graduation, benchmarks for graduate employment rates, and benchmarks for state licensure pass rates to help determine the continued viability of a program. It is the school's affirmative responsibility to demonstrate that programs are performing at least the minimum threshold. And there is an incredible amount of data the school has available to include data trends in graduation, retention, employment, and pass rates to help the school make an informed decision about the continued viability of a program. The Commission expects institutions to take direct action on poor performing programs, whether that be a curriculum revision, a limitation in enrollment, or even teaching out a poor performing program. The best piece of advice that I would offer to any institution is to not put the fate of a program and to not put the fate of an institution's accreditation status into the hands of a third-party regulatory body. You will lose all control as an institution at that point. So in terms of best practices, you should be talking to program advisory committee members about the actions that are needed to course correct. You should be talking to faculty about what is happening in the classroom. You should survey students, particularly those students on externship, about the application of skills learned in a real-world environment. And you should survey graduates about if they felt prepared to enter the workforce based upon the training received, and if not, what skills could use an additional focus. Most critically, look at the data. Are things getting better? Are things trending worse despite your best efforts? Because if it gets to the commission level, as is the case in our example, that a program continues to fall significantly below the established benchmark, in this case, 40 percentage points below the established benchmark, and that despite the school's best efforts over time, and despite the Commission's formal monitoring of student achievement, that things are continuing to deteriorate, in this case, dropping another 19%. Quite frankly, at that point, there really is not much of a choice for the Commission. And if it were an ACCSC accredited institution, after a period of monitoring and opportunities for improvement, I would expect that the program would be revoked by the Commission with the requirement for a teach-out. For schools seeking to transition from their current accrediting body to ACCSC, which has a long established process for calculating graduation and graduate employment, the message from the Commission is clear. A school will not be successful in earning accreditation if the program offerings are below ACCSC's established student achievement benchmarks, period. And so direct action is needed. And as I shared, it is always better for an institution to take control and wind down operations and teach out a program than it is to go on record with an adverse action being taken by the Accrediting Commission that may even transcend beyond the revocation of a program and impact a school's ability to gain or keep accreditation. So that's it. That is our top 8. From institutional assessment and improvement planning, faculty development plans, admissions documentation, and program advisory committees. These are just some of the key areas for institutions to focus on in the accreditation process. So before we wrap things up, let me pop back in really quickly. Hey everybody. In the few minutes that remain, I wanted to go over just a few logistical questions that we often get. Please know that if you have any specific questions, you can always reach out to ACCSC and ask your questions to an ACCSC staff member. So, some quick logistical questions that we often get under our streamlined Q&A process. 1, will the slides be available? Yes. The slides are available actually in the webinar system. So if you look at your control panel, you will see a section called Documents, and you will see a copy of the webinar slides. Can I use the slides as part of an in-service for my staff? Yes, that sounds like an awesome and very cost-effective idea. Will a recording of the webinar be available? The answer is yes. In the coming days, come to accsc.org and there will be a copy of the webinar. Do I get a certificate for attending the webinar? This was probably the most popular question we got at our last event. And so yes, we have made certificates available. A certificate is available in the system here, and in the coming days we'll put a hard copy certificate on the website as well. I asked a question during the webinar, but I did not get an answer. Well, go ahead and email me at clambert@accsc.org with any questions you have about the webinar or any ACCSC policy or standard. I'll be sure to pass the question along to a staff member here if I don't have an answer. And finally, some confusion that comes up is a few days from now, you're going to get an email. And sometimes the email may say, sorry we missed you at the webinar. Well, you say, I was in attendance. It's an automated system. Please don't worry. Many times people listen and view under one login address. It's just a completely automated system and we're not singling you out. So on behalf of the commission, on behalf of the staff, I really want to thank you for taking the time to join us for this webinar. I hope that you learned one new idea that you can take back to your school. Looking forward to our November commission meeting and getting together with our accrediting commission in the next couple of days. We have a bunch of workshops and exciting events that we're eager to launch in 2017. So if there's anything that I can do for you or anyone here at the ACCSC staff can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. And until next time, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today, and I look forward to seeing many of you very soon. So thanks again, and have a great rest of the week.